So, welcome back to the Prescription to Travel MD podcast. I'm Dr. Courtney Downes, and I'm the host of the podcast and your number one encourager, your supporter in your quest for traveling more and living life on your terms. I'm so happy that we're here today to be talking with Dr. Stephanie Jones. We're just getting past the holidays, and it may seem a little counterintuitive to be talking about the topic that we're going to talk about today, but I think it's actually the best time to be talking about this, or yesterday was probably the best time. Today's the next best time, right? So today we're jumping into the topic of holiday travel. And that's right. So it's still sort of fresh on everyone's mind. And most importantly, because the holidays are peak travel times, and if you want to go somewhere around the holidays during those travel times, now is the best time to start looking for ways to book your travel. And that's why I'm thrilled to have her here with us as our guest today. Stephanie is a colleague of mine, fellow physician, and she's a travel agent who specializes in planning incredible trips using points and miles. She's also an expert when it comes to traveling with kids over long distances, as I've watched over the last few days, which is quite the feat in itself. So I'm excited that Stephanie's going to be here to share some tips to help get you to your next destination. You know, if you've ever struggled to find award availability, anyone in the points and miles game can attest to that. It can be difficult during normal time, so especially around that time of the year. If you're wondering how to make the most of your points for holiday travel, this episode is absolutely for you. So thanks so much for being here with us, Stephanie.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself? How did you get started with all of this?
Okay, well, as you said, I'm a physician. I'm also a mom. I started traveling as a teenager, living abroad, and caught the travel bug hard. Obviously, having kids is an adjustment to that. Being a full-time physician makes that tricky as well. But after learning how to really leverage my expenses for points and miles, I've really been able to stretch my family's travel budget and expand our horizon and unlock opportunities that would otherwise be out of our budget or unattainable. Once I really got into traveling as a family and realized how much fun it was, I had a lot of my friends and family say, wow, I just can't imagine. Where did you even start? I don't think I would be able to do that with kids. So I decided to start a travel agency on my own to really marry those two passions, continue traveling and exploring, and also help unlock that world for other people who are hoping to travel with their families.
And so as a physician who's also interested in, being a travel agent, and it's something that comes up often, how did you get started? Like, how do you go from thinking, oh, maybe I'm going to travel and I'm going to plan these trips for everyone else to actually officially making it happen?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I found another physician who was a travel agent, and she was really the one who just talked to me about her process. She's an ED physician, and so she's able to really work on her travel agency when she's not working. So she shared with me all of the opportunities that it had opened up for her and things that it allowed her family to do, and has been mentoring me in the process, which has been wonderful. So I'm presently a travel agent through Archer, and I have my own LLC and my own website and everything, but I'm able to use Archer's relationships with other hotels and travel companies. And I really focus on custom itineraries for families. I know that there's not a one size fits all, and so I don't really sell packages. I get an idea of what every family's looking for, what your travel style is like, where you've been, where you want to go. And then I make a custom itinerary with suggestions for things to do, places to stay, tours to do. And then I'm able to book all of that for the client, give them one single itinerary that has links to all of their tickets, hotels, so that when families go and travel, they're not constantly looking for the confirmation in their email, trying to figure out what they're going to do that day, and waste precious time on the trip, planning the trip. That's all done ahead of time so that they can just be present and enjoy themselves while they're traveling.
Most of the trips that I plan and most of the trips that most people plan, I think are, easily doable. You can book them on your own. It doesn't take a lot of brain power to determine, like, I'm going to the airport, I'm going to location A, and then I'm flying back home. But I think it becomes a little bit more challenging when you're looking at multiple destinations and you're planning for larger groups. And I think those are times when you may want to use a travel agent, such as yourself.
I totally agree. When I was traveling on my own, I wouldn't have even thought about using a travel agent. But even traveling for my own family with kids, I do the same thing. I make a travel itinerary, share it with my husband, and all the planning is done up front. Because when you're traveling with kids, I don't have that mental space to be thinking, what do I want to do next? What whim do I want to follow? It's trying to keep my kids happy, keep my kids fed, keep us all on schedule. So all of that work is done ahead of time so that in the moment I can try and be as present as possible rather than Googling what should I do next? What coffee shop should I go to? Where should we eat?
And are you still working full time while doing all of this?
Yes, I am. I work at my FTE is a little reduced. I'm a point 0.8 FTE, but it definitely feels like full time, especially with a spouse who works and 2 kids. So, yes.
So how do you balance it all?
I think balance is an elusive term. I try and remember that not every day is going to be balanced, but I try and balance life out over a 6-month period or a 12-month period. And some days are going to be more work heavy, more heavy with my kids' activities and the kids' schools. And then some periods of time, like the one that I just had, are going to be more travel focused and leisurely. And it's easy when I'm in the weeds of working to be overwhelmed and think that my life is totally out of balance. And so I then will look back at pictures and memories of trips that I have taken in the last year and remember that, okay, actually this is pretty balanced.
And so you said recently, tell us about your recent expeditions.
Yeah, so my family and I just came back from a 3-week trip to Southeast Asia. We left the day after Christmas and flew to Bangkok for our first destination, and then divided our time up over Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, and then we had a stopover in Singapore on the way home. It was a trip that I had taken with my sister about 12 or 13 years ago. And I remember at the time thinking what a fun place it would be to go with kids. And so I brought that dream to reality and was able to take my kids back, and it was really special.
And so this was the first time they've been over to Asia?
Yes, it was. We've traveled to Europe, and this stretched us even farther as a family. And there were definitely challenging times, as with any travel, but overall, it was a really positive experience.
Okay. And how old are your kids?
They are 9 and 6.
9 and 6. Okay. And how do they do on long flights? Because I imagine you're flying from where now?
We left from Seattle and flew to Singapore and then Bangkok. Yeah. So I won't sugarcoat it. The flight over there it took us 17 hours to get to Singapore. And then we had a layover. It was very short. And then another 2 hours to Bangkok. So my older daughter does fine. She's great. She loves it because she's not able to watch a lot of movies and TV at home, but we loosen up the rules on flights. And so she does great. My younger daughter, unfortunately, was sick basically the whole flight. Motion sick. She gets really bad motion sick. But thankfully, we had been able to use points to buy business class tickets. And if you're going to have to suffer, it's certainly more comfortable to suffer business class than it is in economy. So I was really thankful that I had been able to use our points for that because it definitely made that easier.
Where'd you guys fly?
We flew Singapore Airlines. And so a year ago to the day when they opened the award calendar, I was on the computer and was able to snag 4 tickets for us.
That's quite the feat.
Yes, it was. But, I think that's one of the great things about points and miles is I would have never spent the cash to fly a family of 4 from Seattle to Bangkok in business class, but having points allowed me to do that and then to spend more money on experiences while we were there.
And so you booked your flights to Singapore and to Bangkok using points. And then what about your stays while you were there?
Yes, I was also able to book about 90% of our hotel stays with Hyatt. And that made a big difference for us as well because we were able to stay in nicer properties than I would have otherwise. We were able to use to book suites in every place that we stayed, which for a family of 4 is much more comfortable. I have Globalist with Hyatt, so we were able to have free breakfast every day, So when traveling as a family of four, that significantly reduced our expenses.
Can imagine. So you got all the way across to Asia with points, and then you booked all of your hotels with points. You had free breakfast every day, so I can imagine that was like tens of thousands of dollars that were saved. And then you got there, and then when you book with points, you have the option of using your cash that you would have otherwise spent on your hotels and your travels to have some really cool and unique experiences. And so I've been following you along on Instagram as you shared some of your experiences with your kids. And you were there when there was like some type of, was it like a mouse or like a rat or something that was looking for like mines, which I thought was like really cool, something I'd never heard of before. You want to tell us about some of your experiences there?
Kids love animals. And so I do love to seek out experiences with wildlife. When we were in Cambodia, we went to the Apopo Rats Visitor Center. They're African giant pouch rats. This was all news to us, but they train them to smell TNT. And so, because they're so light, they can be out in the field sniffing. And once they detect and smell TNT, they scratch on the surface, but they're too light to detonate the landmines. So then the location where they sniff are marked, and then people can go in and deactivate the landmines and clear the land so that the Cambodians can get back to farming safely on the land without fear of landmines. So we were able to go to the visitor center and hold one of the rats. It was currently on a vacation and rehab because he had gotten a little overweight. So they were exercising him, and it was really cool. It was amazing. We learned so much, and the girls loved it, and that was one of the highlights for us in Cambodia. We also were able to go to Angkor Wat and some of the other temples around Siem Reap, and it was really just amazing experience. And Cambodian people are so warm, and for a country that has so recently experienced such devastating trauma, both in their civil war and landmines from neighboring wars, we were just blown away with how kind and welcoming they were to us.
What would you say was your girls' favorite experience while they were there?
Their favorite experience was feeding elephants in Thailand. We went to an elephant sanctuary while we were there and had the opportunity to feed them sugarcane and bamboo leaves and bananas. And there's truly nothing like it in the world that we've ever experienced. And being able to be that close to the animals and seeing some baby elephants with their moms and just watching them up close was absolutely it was amazing. And so my kids really loved that. My older daughter had an elephant named Naughty. He would wrap his trunk around her and hug her throughout the day. And she just thought that was the coolest thing ever. And I'm sure it will be one of her core memories and mine.
So I think you already deal with the challenges of, again, getting from the US all across to the other side of the world. And then you're trying to navigate going from one country to the next and trying to make sure that a sick kid is doing okay on the plane and that you can make it through there. And then when you get there, I think a lot of times you may have issues with the language barriers. And so did you find that that was an issue for you guys while you were there? And how did you navigate that?
Yeah, the farther you get from the really densely traveled tourist areas, the more of an issue it becomes. And especially in countries where there isn't even crossover familiarity or even the alphabets and the letters are different, it certainly can be a challenge. We found that there's a lot of just commonality to the human experience, and with gestures and smiles, one of the things I kept reminding my girls to do is to just keep a friendly face. I know it's scary. I know we don't understand. We're in their space and in their country. Just keep a friendly presence and a kind look on your face, and that goes so far, and it transcends the typical words that we're used to and dependent on for communication and conversation.
And I think it's so important that you said that, but also it's so important that you're teaching your kids that, because I think it's easy to live here in the United States and, you travel to Europe and certain places where everyone speaks English, and you travel to Japan and some of the other well-known places. And again, the language barrier is not as big of an issue. but just being open to being able to go places where maybe language is a barrier and knowing that it's something that you can overcome and it doesn't have to be scary and insurmountable, and that you can take your kids to places where where they have these experiences and they can see things from a different perspective is I think is just such an awesome thing.
And I think for me, that's one of the main motivators to take my kids and to stretch them is I'm hoping that through early exposure to a wide variety of ways that people can live and communicate and eat and be in community, that they have an appreciation for how small their place in the world and to gain a respect and empathy for all of the different ways in which you can live a life.
And you booked this trip. Was this over New Year's that you were gone?
Yes, we left the day after Christmas and just got back. So we were there over New Year's. And New Year's has become one of my favorite times to travel, actually, because I love to be adjacent to all the festivities, but I've never really been one who loves to go out and stay out till midnight. I like being close to the parties, and the hotel was having a big party, and we were able to see fireworks from our room. But with young kids, especially, it's not super fun for me to be out really late. The girls actually had fallen asleep in our room, and I woke everybody up for New Year's, and we watched the fireworks, and then everyone went right back to bed. So that was kind of perfect for me. And the hotels were all still decorated from Christmas, and everything felt very festive, and they have extra festive food and decorations, and that was all really fun.
And I think it's so cool that you were able to get such a great redemption around the holidays, because I know when you're trying to travel around the holidays, trying to find the right hotels and book, really good flights and get really good points redemptions business class to a different continent, that can be a little bit challenging. We were looking at going somewhere for New Year's this year and everyone just kept saying, "Okay, we'll wait," because we were trying to plan for my immediate family and like extended family. And I've been trying to get everyone on board with like the points game. And I'm like, "This is the hotel we're going to. We need to book." And everyone was just like, "Okay, well, we'll see. Let's just see." And then I go and look last week, and then the rooms that I've been watching for like the past few weeks are gone now. So I should have learned my lesson like a few months ago when this happened with me with the flight. But I'm also very good about like just planning trips that I probably have no intention of taking due to family obligations and the kids being in school. But it's a pastime for many of us. So.
Well, I think the good thing about points is it makes me a little bit more comfortable to go ahead and book the trip, even if there's a possibility we're going to cancel, because you can get your points back and you may have to pay a small cancellation fee, especially if it's a flight. But for me, it's worth it with the possibility of being able to take these big trips that I wouldn't otherwise spend the cash on during that time.
And so you help people book trips. Do you help them book points related trips, or is it just cash based trips? How does that work?
So predominantly cash-based trips, but I do happily share information and tricks that I have or things that I've learned if my clients want to do, say, a combination of a couple of accommodations on points, but obviously tours and experiences are going to be cash only. Oftentimes they'll maybe want to, like I'm helping a client right now, do a trip that's going to be several days in Paris and then the rest of the time in wine country. So they're hoping to offset some of the expenses with using points to book accommodations in Paris, but then outside of Paris in wine country, et cetera, those will be smaller boutique hotels and experiences that I'm helping them to coordinate.
Any tips and tricks for people who want to book travel for the, upcoming Christmas or Thanksgiving or New Year's holidays?
Yeah, I think my number one pointer is this is a time when planning ahead's necessary. As you even mentioned now, even in January, some of those really popular destinations will book up quickly. Having said that, if you haven't already made the plan for the upcoming year, it's not the end of the world. I think you have to maintain some flexibility with either, in general, with points travel, with dates, with locations, or with your departure airport. Dates are pretty fixed for this time of the year. So then I would encourage you to be flexible with your location or your departure airport. If you have your heart set on one destination, but there isn't any availability right now, I recommend that people book a backup place or backup tickets on cash. and then continue to look for award availability so that if something does become available for your destination of choice, you can snatch that on points and then cancel your cash booking. But if it doesn't, you'll still have a cash booking in place. Next year, we're going to Japan over Thanksgiving. And when I initially booked the trip, the hotel that I wanted to stay in wasn't available. And it didn't become available when our calendar usually opens. So I set an award on Max My Point for my dates of choice and the hotel of choice. And a couple months later, it did become available, and I was able to grab those hotel stays with points availability. But I had backup already in place, and had it not worked out, it would have been fine.
So how far in advance did you need to book your Japan vacation?
So I booked that one with airline points the day that the calendar opened through business. There's economy availability beyond then. But as I've been watching, I also noticed that there will often be last minute availability. So, again, if you're willing to take that risk and you have a refundable cash booking in place, then you can watch for last minute availability and pivot and change plans if something becomes available.
I'm sure that's a little harder when you're trying to go with a family of four versus, go with just two people.
Exactly. Yeah, which is why, I try to make a couple of reservations for peak travel times a year in advance and then maintain a higher degree of flexibility during the rest of the year. I booked Japan Airlines via Cathay Pacific for our trip from Seattle to Japan. I used Amex points, so I transferred Amex to Cathay, and then Cathay opens their award space availability before Japan Airlines does and before American and Alaska get those award seats. So I was able to book on Cathay as soon as they became available. And that was a new redemption for me.
Do you figure out like how many days or what day the calendar opens and you just kind of have your alarm set to and ready to book when they open, or how does that work?
Yeah, for this one, I reached out to someone who knows a lot more about redemptions than I do. And she coached me on how to do it. And then a couple weeks ahead of time, I went through some practice bookings to just make sure I could see when those tickets became available. And then when I was pretty confident that I would be able to do it, transferred the points to Cathay ahead of time so they were there and ready. And then unfortunately, the calendar, I think, opens at midnight Pacific time. So it was in the midst of a heavy work stretch. And so I actually went to sleep, set my alarm, woke up, booked the tickets at midnight, and then went back to sleep, which is a little bit of a hassle, but I was able to buy our tickets there and back completely with points and about $250 in fees. So if that's what I have to do to get a family of four return trip from Japan and back, it's worth it.
And so you booked your one-way tickets there, and then did you have to do it again to book your flight back?
Yeah, since the calendar is then staggered, I waited a couple of weeks and then was able to book our return. We're flying back in economy, so that was a little easier. It'll be painful then, but I figure we can take a couple extra trips. We'll be on our way back, exactly.
Yeah, and that's one thing that's different about points bookings compared to like cash bookings. You most of the time want to book a one-way flight, so that way you can get your tickets when they open. You're not waiting like 2 weeks until your return flight opens up, because by then, like, your business class seats are gone.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And that's what I did. Yeah,
Now, so you have your flights already and you have your hotel stays booked already as well?
I do. Yep.
Where are you guys staying at?
So we're going to stay in Tokyo. And again, traveling with a family of four limits us a little bit. The room occupancy in Japan's pretty strict. And so I chose the Grand Hyatt in Tokyo since four of us can stay in a suite. We're going to do a couple of stays in some smaller hotels that will be cash only. One of my friends recommended an overnight stay in a Buddhist monastery. So we're really excited about that. It's obviously not something you can book with points. But then our big hotel redemption was 3 nights at the Park Hyatt Kyoto. So that'll be our big point splurge. And even though it was a lot of points, cash value for four of us to stay during that time, I think, was $15,000 or $16,000, an amount of money that I would never spend on a hotel for just 3 days. But because I am able to earn points at a different rate, I was able to splurge, and I'm really looking forward to that experience with our family.
So you've got a lot of things that are coming up, and I know other people are looking towards going to Japan in the next year. I mean, Japan has just been really hot overall over the
Mhm.
past couple of years. So I'm sure people will be listening in to hear all about how you made that amazing redemption, so that way they can learn some tips and be able to make their own redemptions.
Yeah, and there are a couple of great places in Japan, that you can book for families. The Hyatt Place Kyoto, I've heard wonderful things about, and I was able to book us a night for 9,000 points for all 4 of us. And there are a couple of Hyatt Places and Hyatt Houses who I've heard are significantly nicer than some of the Hyatt Places and houses that we're used to seeing here in the States. So for a family traveling to Japan, it really does make that more affordable and makes a trip that might otherwise be cost prohibitive possible.
Right. And so you have globalist status, so that does get you, the Suite Upgrade Awards. If you're someone who's not fortunate enough to have that status, how does it work in terms of booking for a family that's more than 3 people?
One of the great things that Hyatt offers at a lot of their properties, not all of them, but they'll offer a cash discount for the second room if it's for children. Some of them have age limitations, but some of them don't. And so that way, a family of 4, you can book 1 room on points and then get the second room for a significant discount off of the cash price, 30 to 40%. And so that helps with making it more of it affordable.
Yeah, I imagine that can be pretty cost prohibitive otherwise. I know myself when we travel, it's me and my husband, my 2 kids, but my mom and my sister will often come along, so that's, 6 people. So it's nice because a lot of places like in Europe would only take 3 to a room, so we can, break it down into, 2 separate rooms. But when we went to the Andaz, there were 5 of us, and so that was just, just one more person, and we ended up having to get an extra room, so, that's twice the points.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things that I've been able to do too, on the travel agency side is to really highlight some properties that are more affordable for families traveling. For example, in Japan, the Mimaru hotel line has Japanese and Western style apartments that will often sleep up to 4 to 6 people per room. That's always something that I'm looking for when I'm traveling and when I'm researching is affordable properties for bigger families who might not fit into the rooms with just 2 or 3 occupancy and also don't want to have to book 2 to 3 rooms to travel with their family of 5.
So if there are people who are interested in making points bookings or they're looking for a travel agent or advisor to help them with your cash-based bookings, how can they reach out to you?
The easiest way to connect with me is probably through Instagram. My travel account is called Joy is Not a Crumb, or you could email me at joyisnotacrumbtravel@gmail.com.
And so you're able to help them with these things in addition to helping them with tips for some of these unique experiences as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the things that actually makes family travel easier is, as I said, to have a little bit of structure to the trip so that even if you just book one activity at a day, it's easier to structure the family. I've found if we say, okay, we're going to do one tour and then in the afternoon it'll be open for swim or relaxing or hanging out at the hotel. And so I go out of my way to find travel guides, tour guides, and tours that are really catered towards education and engagement with children, and do my best to connect my clients with these tour guides so that it also takes a little bit of pressure off of the parents and the adults who are not only there for themselves, but also the activity coordinator for the kids. If there's another adult that's a professional that can entertain and engage the kids, it takes a little pressure off of the parents. We took a really fun museum tour in Amsterdam at the Van Gogh Museum, and our tour guide brought a sketch pad and crayons for the girls, and she would set them in front of the paintings and have them color and sketch and recreate the paintings. Well, then she would talk to us about the paintings and the significance and the history, and it was so much more enjoyable for us than if we were the ones having to tell the kids about the paintings and try and engage them while also ourselves trying to understand and enjoy what we were seeing.
That's a neat idea. I hadn't really thought about something like that. But yeah, it's, very interactive and the kids, they'll remember those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I certainly am able to enjoy myself more when there's somebody else who's saying, okay, let's go here and we're going to go here and look at this and look at that. It's exhausting if you're the one doing that the whole time.
Are there any particular locations that you specialize in?
I'm the most familiar with Europe and Mexico, but after this trip to Southeast Asia, I've gained a lot of experience, met a lot of really great tour agents, and definitely feel comfortable helping a family plan in that area. I plan multiple trips to Japan, including my own upcoming trip. And then I've lived in New York and traveled extensively in the States. So I feel very comfortable helping families if there's something domestic that they're interested in.
And if people are looking to book trips over the holidays, are there any particular locations that you'd recommend?
Honestly, I think anywhere's great. I think obviously the European Christmas markets are really fun. We did that last year. We went to Vienna, Budapest, and Prague, and Amsterdam, and that was amazing. This year being in Southeast Asia was really fun, mainly because it was warm. And where I live happens to be cold and gray for many, many months on end. And so escaping that was wonderful. So I think if you're looking for a warm destination, there are many places on offer. If you're looking for a cozy, cold, snowy destination, many places on offer as well. It really just depends on do you want to go hot? Do you want to go cold? Do you want to go on the beaten path, off the beaten path?
Well, I'm always going to choose to go hot.
Yeah, I don't blame you. After I came back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't shivered for 3 weeks and I've been shivering all day. I think I might stick with hot destinations in the winter going forward.
And so your kids are very well traveled, but any recommendations for parents who want to maybe travel with small kids who maybe trying to be a little more adventurous but don't exactly know where to go?
Yeah, I think had this trip to Southeast Asia been their first big experience with traveling, I think it would have been challenging or more challenging. There were still challenges, I think, because the food was pretty foreign. Language, as you mentioned, was a barrier, and the distance, that's really far. For people who are just wanting to get their feet wet, I recommend Mexico is an amazing place. Lots of places in and Central America, mainly because there's no jet lag. You know, you can maybe shift 1 or 2 time zones, but you're not going to be spending half of your trip adjusting to the time. It's easier to get to Mexico City for us than it is even Hawaii. You know, it's on the West Coast. So I recommend either staying in a closer time zone if it's your first time, or going to a place where there's going to be familiar food. Obviously, as Europe, my kids are now begging me for a trip to Italy since their favorite foods are pizza and pasta. And after a week of rice noodles and street food that was amazing for the adults, but pretty intimidating for the kids, they're like, when do we just can we get to go to Italy and just eat pizza and pasta for 3 weeks?
Well, I'm sure my kids will be navigating that soon as we're planning our trip to Asia over the next upcoming summer. So,
Well, and the good thing is the universal kid-friendly food is fruit. And we had the best, most delicious fresh fruit the entire time. So they lived on fruit and French fries, which are also pretty readily available.
well, it's been a pleasure talking to you today and learning a little bit more about your exciting trips. And I'm looking forward to following you along on Instagram as you guys continue to traverse the globe. And I know that, again, people want to reach out to you. So, Joy is not a crumb. You can find Stephanie at Joy is not a crumb on Instagram. And you mentioned email or website.
Yes, email joysnotacrumbtravel@gmail.com.
Yep. So make sure you guys get your trips booked. Again, now is the time to start planning for those holiday vacations. New Year's, Christmas is coming up. I know, again, it just passed, but it will be here before you know it. And so you want to make sure that if any of those destinations are in your forecast for the next year, that you get those trips booked. Don't be like me. I'm still sitting here going, what am I doing this summer? As much as I preach, hey, get your trips booked early. I'm usually the straggler who's like waiting till the last minute and then hoping for some really great, miraculous points redemptions to show up. So,
But there are lots of opportunities for last minute bookings. So don't get discouraged if you haven't booked those trips yet. My husband and I play what we call travel roulette, and we'll often just go where the deals are and try and not have a specific destination in mind. And that's led to some really great trips.
well, we almost ended up in Dublin in November in the cold because I was like, "Hey, there's flights to Dublin." My sister was like, "What's there?" I was like, "I don't know, but there's a business class flight from here."
I don't know, but we can get there for cheap, so let's go.
So we'll see what this year brings. Well, thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been really fun to talk to you, and I love following along on your travels and journeys as well. And I love what you're doing and think that it's great that you're educating and trying to open this world for more people to enjoy travel.
Thank you. And I hope all of you who are listening will go and follow myself and Stephanie on Instagram and join us on the Facebook group. If you're getting ready to book a trip and you want the assistance of either of us, you know where to find us. We're happy to help and hope that you'll just keep traveling, listening along. Make sure that you leave us a 5-star review so that way others know how to find the podcast. Share the podcast episode with your friends and your family, all the people that you want to see traveling with you in the next year. Thanks again for listening.